You ever been in the storm, Taylor?
I was in a storm just now. Holy shit, buddy. It was raining cats and dogs in Kansas City, and you, instead of not experiencing that by being in Colorado, you were right here with me.
I sure was. And I got to tell you, for somebody that lived in this city for almost my entire life, it constantly surprises me. I've been in Colorado for 4 years. When I stepped off the plane and out of our new airport, which is great, by the way, it was 84% humidity. What the fuck is that? The air here is
It's
like,
terrible.
it's like soup.
Soup,
How did
yeah.
I ever live
Yeah.
in these
Rancid
conditions?
soup.
It's literally like breathing rancid soup. And then I was, working from home, had my laptop up. I'm staying at my parents' house. I'm right next to the windows. Storms howling all around. There's like 100-foot trees here, which we don't
Yeah.
have in Colorado either because, I actually don't even really know why we don't have them. We just don't have
Maybe
them.
the soil can't support it.
Maybe it's the soil, maybe it's the
Yeah,
wind,
elevation.
elevation. Who knows what it is? But in any case, we don't have trees that size. And you texted me, you're like, my power's down. And I was like, oh, that probably means there's some trees down. I was like, oh, if that tree falls on me, I'm just going to die.
Well, I'll tell you what, the rest of the NFL is not ready for the storm that's about to hit them this season.
Welcome into It's Always Sunny in Chiefs Kingdom. I'm Austin. Find me on Twitter at Real Bird Lawyer and on Threads. Although I have not threaded yet, but I am on Threads under the same hat, just in case, just in case things go sour or south on the Elon app. We can switch over to the Zuck app. Here with me, as always, my co-host Taylor at Taylor_Wit on Twitter and Taylor M Wit on Threads.
Good pull there. I didn't have it written down, but you still remembered my alternate identity there. It's not looking good for the Threads app. I feel no interest in it. I'm not compelled to tweet. I'm not compelled to look at other people's threads.
Threads.
I don't get it. I guess I don't know. I wanted to get it.
I wanted to get it too, but I mean, the name of the app, Threads, like, what do you call a thread on Threads? That doesn't even make sense. Like, come up with a different. Yeah, I mean,
Well, have you even opened it?
I mean,
honestly,
I've cracked it open a couple of times, but not since my rate limits on Twitter were restored.
There's just nothing to do.
There's not a lot going on upstairs. No, I get it. It's basically a version of Twitter made by Facebook, and it's Facebook and Instagram with a little bit of like a Twitter overlay. It's not good. But what is good is Underdog Fantasy. Our personal sponsors use our promo code Sunny, SUNNY, to get a matching deposit up to your first $100. Get those drafts going because it is almost draft season. Speaking of draft season, we will be finalizing our listener leagues this week. We're actually going to try and do it tonight. We will be sending out our notifications and drafts will follow. We are almost here. So a week away from training camp starting, which is crazy. We're going to have preseason games in like 3 or 4 weeks. Whew. But first, well, we've got some news, Taylor. Not quite the news that we were hoping yet, but some movement yesterday in the defensive tackle market. Jet star defensive tackle Quinnen Williams signs an extension, 4 years, $96 million, $66 million guaranteed. That makes him the second highest paid defensive tackle in the NFL, $24 million a year. That is behind Aaron Donald, who is at $29 million a year. So Quinnen Williams gets his money. He does not reset the defensive tackle market. And now, by all accounts, Chris Jones signing could be imminent.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the tea leaves right now. Makes sense. I think everybody was waiting first for Quinnen Williams to make sure that Chris Jones deservedly got more money than him. Quinnen Williams is a great player, and I think appropriately rated the third best defensive tackle in football. But that's because Chris Jones is, if not two, one. I mean, he is certainly deserving of every bit of money that he's going to get from this. It's Friday night, and you and I kind of pushed our pod this week in part because we were kind of expecting to be able to start the show off with the Chris Jones announcement, maybe even a DeAndre
Yeah,
Hopkins announcement,
hoping it is.
we were hoping for it. That hasn't happened yet. So either next week we're going to have some good news, or we're going to break in the middle of the week with an emergency pod or something fun. But I think everybody says that the Chiefs are optimistic it's going to get it done. Chris Jones is thanking Brett Veach in speeches and stuff. And they're very clearly right there. They're 99% done. Just got to finish the contract up.
It seems like a foregone conclusion that he is going to get an extension from the Chiefs. There have been absolutely no whispers or signs to the contrary. And so, again, we're hoping that will get done. As an aside to this story, we have to talk briefly about DeAndre Hopkins, because he commented on Chris Jones's fit at the ESPYs. He did the praise hands, the two hands in the air, and Chris Jones replied to it and did the handshake emoji and the fingers crossed emoji, which can't read too much into that. But listen,
read some into it.
There is a reason that DeAndre Hopkins hasn't signed yet, and I'm not saying that it's because he wants to be a Chief and the Chiefs want him to be a Chief, and they're just waiting for the Chris Jones extension to free up the money. But that could be why. I mean, he definitely has. We know he has an offer from the Patriots. We know he has an offer from the Titans. And honestly, sure, it's completely plausible that, and we know that the Bills are desperate to get him, but laughably, the Bills are saying come take less money to ring chase with us. And it's yeah, but you guys don't have any rings.
Yeah, ring chase with the ringless team.
And also you've never won one. And also you didn't even get to the championship game last year. So
and also I'm going to go play in Buffalo.
Right.
In the
exactly.
cold.
It's not a good situation.
Not into it.
But I'm not saying that it's because he wants to be a Chief and the Chiefs also want that, but that could be part of the reason. And certainly there is plenty of smoke here. Obviously it would be great. We would both be way into it. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it makes a lot of sense for everybody involved. And I know that people have been wringing their hands about Hopkins' age and injury history and all the other stuff. But at the end of the day, they have every incentive to make this team as good as they possibly can be on the football field, because the pressure's not necessarily any more or less on this team than it has been pretty much since the end of Mahomes' first season, where every year the Chiefs expect to go out and compete for a Super Bowl. And without DeAndre Hopkins, they can go out and win a Super Bowl. Absolutely. They just did it without DeAndre Hopkins, and they really haven't changed very much between last year and this year. So it's not the Chiefs aren't a desperate team, but at the same time, a guy of his talents is certainly going to help make everybody's job easier. It's going to bring a lot of juice. And I mean, I just think that from his perspective, you got to join the best team in football if you are going to ring chase at his age. And might as well do it with Patrick Mahomes, and the marriage makes sense. So you're right. I think the fact that he hasn't signed anywhere yet is better news for the Chiefs, because we see what the Chiefs were waiting for to sign it. We see the fact that they needed to get Chris Jones to free up some money for this year. There's really no obvious explanation why he hasn't signed in Buffalo, or why he hasn't signed for the Patriots or the Titans, other than the obvious reasons, which is they're not as good as the Chiefs.
Right. Sure. That he doesn't want to be there.
Yeah.
In other news, we have been plowing through, as I'm sure all of our listeners have as well, the new Netflix series Quarterback, which documents Marcus Mariota, Kirk Cousins, and of course, Patrick Mahomes' 2022 seasons, mic'd up for every game, shots on the sideline, obviously access off the field. Your thoughts so far?
Well, as you know, since we've been binging it together, we are 5 episodes into the show. It's fantastic. It's a great, just a profile of Patrick Mahomes in a way that I mean, you and I have seen pretty much every documented video and image of Patrick Mahomes in existence. I mean, it's that content never gets old, but the way that it's packaged for this Netflix special, the video quality, which we both remarked on several times on just how unbelievable it is on this, just to see, cinema level quality of Chiefs games, and then the cussing. I can't get over it. I'm juvenile a little bit, but the number of times that Patrick Mahomes says fuck cracks me up every single time. And he does it throughout the show. I'm going to do a supercut. Oh, I should plug. Right now, I'm chopping up these episodes into only Patrick Mahomes segments. So taking out all the Mariota and all the Cousins segments. So if you want to find that, check me out on Twitter, Taylor_Witt. I'll have posts of just the Mahomes only cuts. But I'm also then after that going to do a supercut of just all of his hilarious noises and curses and all that fun stuff. So it's been an absolute delight. What do you think?
It's been great. I think the most enjoyable aspect of it for me is I mean, like you said, certainly the uncensored side of him. And obviously he had creative
He's
control
a
over
dog.
this. He had the final say on what made it into the special. But the fact that it's rated TVMA solely for his language,
yeah,
because it certainly isn't the other two guys, is hilarious to me. And like,
yes.
I mean, we knew that he wasn't a choir boy out there because the NFL has to mute or strategically bleep a lot of his mic'd up segments whenever he's near a microphone on the field. But like,
sure,
I mean,
it's a different thing to just hear him scream it.
Told Andy Reid, "Fuck no,
yeah,
I'm not coming out of the game
no.
against the Jags." Like, no, fuck no.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's a side of him that we don't get to see very often.
That's the Jordan side of it.
Exactly. Especially him telling him to the coach. I think the other thing that really has jumped out to me, and I'm excited to finish the last 3 episodes once we knock this podcast out, because, you know, obviously they focus on the punishment that NFL players take, and it's nowhere near as bad for quarterbacks as it is for offensive linemen, you know, anybody in the trenches on either side of the ball. Because there's rules against hitting the quarterback, but still, you know, the supercut of Kirk Cousins just getting blasted over and over, and then, you know, the recovery that he has to go through just to be able to play every week as the most protected position in the sport. Now, granted, there's always guys coming after him because he always has the ball, but that was really interesting to me. And then, you know, sort of juxtaposing that with what we know we're going to see in the final 3 episodes, and we know what his reaction to having a high ankle sprain is going to be. Like, I'm not coming out of the game. That is Jordan-esque. Like, that is a level of competitor that we have always known exists, but like, it's cool to see it documented. I mean, it's not like The Last Dance broke any new ground. It's not that people didn't know all of these things about Michael Jordan, but it's different to hear about it and see it in their own words.
From the horse's mouth. Yeah, absolutely. Another aspect that's been great is I think Brittany Mahomes has come across just really, really put together.
Awesome.
And she's great. She's really great. And anybody that is out there even listening to the show that's unnecessarily hated on Brittany Mahomes over the years because of a couple videos of her being excited when her baller ass husband's doing baller ass stuff on the field, like, just calm down. She's great. And I think this documentary's done a really good job of showing that, you know, she's the keeping everything together with their family stuff. And so I had to point that out. And
she knows ball. I mean,
and she knows ball. Yeah, she knows what she's doing. Not quite as much as Marcus Mariota's wife, who most certainly knows her ball.
She probably knows more ball than Marcus Mariota does.
But all of them, husbands and wives, know more ball than Kirk Cousins' wife, who is absolutely empty upstairs, which is fine.
Yeah, no, we're not into Kirk Cousins' wife. That's fine. We don't need to hate unnecessarily. But one other thing I wanted to say about Brittany before we move on. I mean, like, listen, we love Patrick Mahomes.
Yes.
He's made us say and do unspeakable things. And like, imagine being married to him. Yeah, I literally so have I, and I wouldn't be able to function. I mean, like, to be like, I literally would not be able to function. I would literally die because I'd be like, I can't believe that this is me, that this is happening to me. This is my life. You know, that my husband's the greatest athlete.
Rocket ship straight to the moon.
You know, we're practically billionaires. We can go and do wherever we want. Like, get excited about that.
Yes, you rule the world.
Or die. Like, yeah, right. Like, yeah.
Be excited about ruling the world.
It's unbelievable.
Yes, I completely agree.
So you've thrown in here our last news segment, Summer of the Chiefs. I'm going to let you read this list off that you curated because, boy, this is wild. As you prepared this, by the way, did you know that Pat's out playing golf again? And
yes, in Tahoe, right?
and
believe.
he's crushing it.
Rushing drives,
Yeah,
hit
no,
like
I mean,
a 300 and something yard drive earlier.
he did, and he just got out of the sand on 17 and then hold the putt from, it looks like it's probably about a 15, 20-foot putt. So,
Well, let me tell you, this list I'm about to read has a lot of Mahomes and it has a lot of golf. And I mean, really, this is just to put in perspective, because as soon as quarterback came out, I saw a bunch of tweets and a bunch of stuff from non-Chiefs fans that were like, I'm just over the team and over him. Not even really that they were hating him, but just like that they were overexposed. And this is going to start with Patrick Mahomes winning the Super Bowl MVP, and the MVP, and the Chiefs, of course, winning the Super Bowl. There was a Super Bowl parade in Kansas City. Travis Kelce hosted Saturday Night Live. Patrick Mahomes made Time Magazine's top 100 most influential people of the year. The Chiefs visited the White House to celebrate their Super Bowl victory. There was an NFL draft hosted in Kansas City where Patrick and Travis went out on the stage with the Lombardi Trophy, and Clark Hunt got to say the first pick for the Super Bowl, defending Super Bowl champions. I mean, it was very, very in your face how much the Chiefs were winning, which was great for us. Speaking of winning, Patrick and Travis defeated Klay Thompson and Steph Curry in the golf matchup. Mahomes got to do the iconic Riders Up at the Kentucky Derby, and then that weekend also went to an F1 Miami Grand Prix, and then earlier was at the Met Gala. So Mahomes has just been absolutely all over the place. Mahomes and Kelce and some other, very notable, famous Kansas City celebrities came home for the Big Slick charity event, baseball or softball tournament, which was always really highly covered and just gets a lot of pub there. Travis threw out the first pitch at a Guardians game, which did not go well, but then he got redemption and threw out the first pitch at a Royals game and threw a strike. And the Chiefs won the ESPY for best team. Patrick Mahomes won the ESPY for best NFL player, along with best male athlete, which is a huge accomplishment.
Sure, there's a lot of male athletes out there.
A lot of really good ones. I mean, he beat like Messi and LeBron, and I mean, it's definitely a huge deal to win best male athlete. And then just to underscore the whole kind of landscape of sports media, New Heights has been the number one sports podcast, just an absolute, media darling. And of course, Travis Kelce co-hosts that with his brother Jason. And Chiefsaholic, I threw him in here because, I mean, that was on Pat McAfee, that was on ESPN, that was, I get it that the story's ridiculous, but it's about the Chiefs. It's about a Chiefs fan. No one would be talking about it if it wasn't Chiefsaholic, if it was just some idiot that was robbing banks. And finally, the cap it all off so far, the summer's not done yet, but quarterback comes out this week. Patrick Mahomes is front and center. He takes up a bunch of airtime on the show. Everyone's talking about this crazy, great stuff that Patrick Mahomes did and the Chiefs did. And of course, we haven't even finished it, but it's going to cap off with the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl. We already know that. So just the whole arc of football from, the time of January, the time of the Super Bowl, and even before that when New Heights was hot. But it's all been Chiefs all the time, every single week. It's not like the NFL took a break when the offseason started. It's just been, we've seen more Chiefs coverage in the offseason than we did during the regular season.
We have, which is unbelievable. And it's what a time to be alive. I mean, truly, it's an incredible time to be a Chiefs fan. Let's do a really quick Ask Ourselves Anything for those of you unfamiliar with this segment. This is when we ask ourselves mailbag questions. We probably need to do a mailbag episode here in the next.
Sure. Yeah, they're all patiently waiting on Discord. I'm sorry, guys. We haven't been able to fit it in lately.
Yeah, I mean, there's been nothing going on, but also everything going on. We'll get to it. But I had a question to ask for myself, because in quarterback, we learned what Patrick Mahomes' career would have been if he was not a professional baseball player or professional football player. And in fact, he said, when speaking to this child who asked him this question, which is a great question, what he wanted to be when he grew up, it was a baseball player. Football player wasn't even number 2 on his list. Number 2 on his list was lawyer, which is my profession. And so Patrick Mahomes, would he have been a good lawyer? The answer, of course, is yes. He would be an amazing lawyer, and I will tell you exactly why. Listen, I think the number one thing that attracts people to the law, at least to litigation, there's people that do contractual work. That's a huge part of the legal profession, but those people are, no offense, but they're nerds. And they like to, I mean, they're basically, they're one step removed from accountants. We as lawyers let accountants, practicing accountancy, whatever they call it, is practicing law. But we basically said, like, you can do taxes because we don't want to do them. So, like, after we weeded out accountants from the legal profession, the people that remain, the people that do contracts and whatever, that's fine. But listen, the practice of litigation, trial work is, I mean, for non-athletes, it's like one of the most competitive things that you can possibly do. Like, you are in an adversarial system that literally determines the fates of people's lives. And of course he would be attracted to that. I mean, it makes perfect sense. Like, he's not going to be sitting in some office somewhere going over the fine details of contract. Fuck no. He's going to be,
he's got the sex appeal,
and he's going to be delivering. Now, I think one of the things that has jumped out about this about this series that just has to be making his haters furious is just how incredibly likable he is. I get that, like, lawyers have a bad rap, and there certainly are many high-powered litigators who are total dicks, not only outside of the courtroom but inside the courtroom, and they're just extremely aggressive. And there's this idea that, like, your lawyer needs to be objecting to everything and he needs to be mean to the other side and blah blah blah. No, listen, that's not how you're effective as a lawyer. You are effective as a lawyer by getting people to like you. Like, that's it's the judge, it's the jury. Like, it's a
people game.
It's a people game. You are just trying to convince people to do what you want. And the best way to do that is not by yelling at them and scaring them. You catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. And listen, the guy is just extremely likable. Obviously, I'm biased, but, like, I don't understand how anybody could watch this. And other than the fact that he's become, to non-Chiefs fans, overexposed, which I do understand. Like, I get that. But other than that, like, I just don't understand how anybody could find him unlikable. He's so humble and down to earth and just funny. Like, he's just funny. One point that was raised against him when I lamented the fact that he never got to practice the law. I'm not lamenting it that hard.
No.
People did mention his voice. And I'm telling you that I think the voice is an asset because, again, it's weird, but, like, weird isn't necessarily bad.
It's like, endearing.
Exactly. It's endearing. It's again, it makes him, it just brings him down a notch almost, right? The fact that he's got this sort of strange voice, it normalizes him. It makes him more likable. And at the same time, people will tell you that it's not about having a beautiful voice. It's about having a unique voice that's memorable. And his voice is extremely memorable and extremely recognizable, right? Like, your great orators, I mean, even your great models, like people that become supermodels, Gisele Bündchen, I wouldn't describe her as conventionally attractive. And personally, I don't understand it. I don't really get it. But she has a very distinctive look, right? Like, it's not just out of a mold. It's not a cookie cutter look. And that's why she became extremely famous, right? It's not the most famous models in the world are not people that you would necessarily say, like, if you were comparing them, that, hey, she's prettier than, like, Margot Robbie. But, like, Margot Robbie's very traditional looking, right? Like, she's very classically beautiful. Yeah. And Gisele is unique, right? That's Pat's voice in a nutshell. Gisele Bündchen's face is Pat's voice.
That's definitely a good comparison.
And that's why he'd be good as a lawyer.
Another thing that a person he reminds me of who's very popular, Taylor Swift, is like extremely likable, but also very overexposed. And you'll notice that most of the people that are vocal about not enjoying Taylor Swift are just not into, like, pop music and, like, people that they hear a bunch of and stuff like that. And they don't really ever have anything negative to say about, like, personality or, like, specifics, like, that's kind of how the Mahomes hate seems to me. It's just people that are just like, we get it. He rules. He's awesome. Everyone loves him. Go away. Like, that kind of, annoyed. Yeah, right. Exactly. And he just is, like you said earlier, I have no idea how anyone could watch interviews and video and the quarterback and just not love the guy. I mean, he's so likable that if he was in a courtroom, like, how could people not just be like, yeah, whatever that guy's arguing, like, that is definitely true. Not to mention, he's sharp as hell. I mean, you don't think that he would completely overanalyze every case and come in
Totally.
there with
Yeah, we didn't
nuance
even
and
get
come
to
in
the
there
work
with,
ethic, but that's
yeah,
obviously a
like
huge part of it too.
he's sharp as fuck. And like, I think he would make an outstanding lawyer.
No, and that actually, you bring up a great point, because we were talking about this last night when we were watching the fourth or fifth episode, where
Yeah.
they kind of cover the
The
quarterback
fourth
study
one.
habits.
Yeah.
What was striking to me was the difference between how Kirk Cousins sort of described what he does and the way that Patrick Mahomes described what he does. They both have
Yes.
notebooks, they both approach it, but like for Kirk, it's like, I got to go memorize a bunch of plays. And for
Rote
Pat, it was
memorization.
like,
Yep.
yeah, for Pat, it was like, I'm looking at how this guy is leaning, so that like I can read what he's doing on the field
Uh-huh.
and react to it. Not that
Uh-huh.
I am going to go memorize all the plays. And ironically, we saw a clip of Kirk Cousins saying whatever in a play call because he couldn't remember the play call.
Yes.
And I'm sure Patrick
Yes.
Mahomes screws up play calls from time to time too. But like just their entire approach to how they're studying film. I mean, he is reading people. He's not just memorizing a play and going where he needs to go. And it was, I mean, maybe this is a little bit of cognitive bias given what I know about their performance as quarterbacks. Like this
Sure.
fits into my preconceived holes for these two quarterbacks, these my jars for these two quarterbacks.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, it is exactly how you would expect them to describe kind of their preparation for a game based on their play on the field.
Well, and yeah, I completely agree. Mariota went through similar things where he would sit there with his wife every week and she would read the plays and he would recite the plays back to her. I mean, the memorization aspect is a huge deal of calling the plays because
Sure,
they
of
need
course,
to.
it is like another language.
It is. It's completely foreign language. But
Both of those guys were playing in new systems, to be fair.
They were absolutely. But even just the mentality that they had, even though they are new systems, you can just kind of tell that there's a difference between when the offensive coordinator or the head coach calls a play in, and then you have to be able to remember that whole call and then turn around and say it all back to your team and then go execute that play. I get that is that level of cognitive, the way that all those NFL quarterbacks can do it is extremely impressive. But as with everything, there are levels to it. And the level that goes up from being able to memorize it and recite it and go execute it is the why. Why are we calling this play? Why are we, designing it the way that we're designing it? And that's where you can just tell that Mahomes just has such a death grip on football strategy, on the ability to come up to the line of scrimmage. And the reason that a play is called, he and Andy's relationship has been well documented, that they are two peas in a pod and that they talk through everything and that they're right there. And Andy's the best offensive play caller of all time. There is no debate about that. And the fact that Mahomes and him are so in sync and together with all those plays, it just comes across. It just comes across in this show that, like you said, the body language thing, that's something where Kirk Cousins is sitting there trying to memorize a play call and Patrick's going, how are we going to beat this guy?
Right.
How are we going to line up against the Chargers and trick them and call something that they're not expecting and get Kelsey open for a touchdown? Like, it's just a different level of, sophistication to it. And we knew it. We knew that would be the case because Patrick executes better than anybody else in the NFL. And clearly that would have to do with his mind, but it's just really fun to see that play out on the screen.
Yeah, and to put a bow on the South Coast Hills anything, I mean, I think that is a quality that all of the best trial attorneys or courtroom attorneys have, which is the ability to adapt on the fly, right? Like, I mean, you can memorize what you're going to say, like you can have your typed out list of questions that you're going to ask a witness, but then you're not listening to what the witness is saying. You're not reacting to what they're saying. You're missing information that they are giving you and the ability to react to it and respond to it in a way that's going to be positive for your case. Same thing goes for jurors. I mean, when you're making an argument, if you're just essentially reciting a memorized speech, you're not looking at how they are reacting to what you're saying. They're not assessing whether they are agreeing with you or disagreeing with you. You're not tailoring what you're saying to your audience. And I mean, the way that he plays football is completely predictive in my mind of how he would be able to perform in a courtroom or really in any kind of competitive environment that requires you to read and react to information as it comes in. I mean, he just is on a completely different level.
He is.
One final item on the pod for today. That's our Ask Blast from the Past. If you're joining us for the first time, this is our ongoing segment where we recap week by week the 2003 Kansas City Chiefs season. And boy, I gotta say, I'm excited. It's week 10. Chiefs are undefeated. We're 9-0, and we're traveling to Cincinnati to take on the moribund Cincinnati Bengals. Like, this is fine. Listen, I know the Chiefs have come into this game not having won a game in Cincinnati since 1984. We've only played one game in Cincinnati since then. So, NFL scheduling is a little bit weird, but confidence is high. And I defer to you, our expert, who followed the 2003 season very closely, which of course I did not. For those of you that have been listening to this segment, you know that I'm sort of experiencing this for the first time in terms of watching the games. But what were your vibes going into this game? I mean, like, we're coming off of essentially back-to-back blowouts by the Chiefs. They've been dominant the last couple of weeks in beating the Browns 41-20, and before that the Bills 38-5. Both of those games at home, going on the road to take on the Bengals. And I mean, the Bengals were 4-5. So you've got a team that's 9-0 against a 4-5 team. It is on the road. Kind of what were your vibes? What were your expectations coming into this one?
I don't know if I got this from my dad, but I expected the Chiefs to the other shoe to drop, for the slippers to come off and them turn back into a pumpkin. And really, it was more of it can't keep going this well feeling.
Sure.
Like, it just felt like, okay.
A feeling well known to Kansas City sports fans before like 20.
Most certainly. Absolutely. And I mean, that's just kind of the way that sports goes. You just can't stay on a heater for very long. You just can't. All these guys are professionals and they're paid to play too on the other side and blah, blah, blah. But it had a little bit of juice because before the game, and this was a time before Twitter, this was a time before really you didn't get a lot of public trash talk. Bulletin board material was hard in the age before social media. It was just hard. And Chad Johnson, Chad Ochocinco, Chad whoever he's being called now, he said, I guarantee that the Bengals, that we are going to win this game. I guarantee we're going to give the Chiefs their first loss. And that was widely talked about before this game started. And it was annoying, as the Bengals are wont to do, be annoying. And I just remember, I remember a feeling of just dread that, okay, like we're not going to go undefeated. We're not going to go 16-0. So if it's going to come soon, it's probably going to be this week. It's probably going to be when someone's talking shit and expecting to beat us. And I just had an icky feeling going into this. And as it turns out, I was right.
Before we jump into this game, I just want to set the stage for where the Bengals were in 2003, because they were a very different team from where they are now. And obviously, in light of current events, this game is interesting. You and I were discussing off the air before we hopped on to record the podcast. This game's like, I mean, once 3-1 fails, like once we tie them up in the head-to-head record in the Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes era, this is what they're going to point to. They're going to be like, look, we ruined your perfect season back in 2003, because they're still going to be ringless. They're still going to be pathetic. But listen, this team had a 9-7 season in 1990. And they did not have another winning season again until 2005. They went 15 years without a winning season. They went 3-13, 5-11, 3-13, 3-13, 7-9, 8-8. Their only 500 season in this stretch. 7-9, 3-13, 4-12, 4-12, 6-10, and the year before this, 2-14 under Dick LeBeau. And he gets fired, and Marvin Lewis gets hired. And I mean, we talked about 4-5, not a team that should be a threat to a team that's 9-0. But 4-5 for the Bengals, 9 games.
They were on fire.
I mean, this was their best stretch in years.
Yeah.
And John Kitna was the quarterback the previous 2 years, and again under Marvin Lewis, still their quarterback. They would draft Carson Palmer the following year. But I mean, he was having certainly a better season than he'd had the previous couple of years. And this Bengals team, I don't know. It's funny to hear you say now that, like, maybe the levels of apprehension were a little bit higher than we would think, just looking back at what the team was, where the team was at. But this ended up being, I mean, like, I don't want to overstate things, but listen, this is a pathetic franchise throughout its history. This was probably one of the biggest moments in Bengals history I mean, certainly in, you know, uh, since Boomer Esiason retired. I mean,
Sure.
this team
They
had
didn't
not been
have
to the
very many big
playoffs
bang.
since
Yeah.
that 9-7 finish in 1990, and they lost in the divisional round. They had lost the Super Bowl in 1988. I mean,
Yep.
like, this game ended up being, in some ways, their Super Bowl. And Chad Johnson at the time, in his third season, giving us a preview of what Chad Johnson would become. I mean, like, I feel
Yes.
like
Big
this
coming out
game
party for him.
almost put Chad Johnson on the map a little
Yeah.
bit.
It did. It did. It put him on the map more socially than it did. I mean, he was fine in this game. Caught a big pass late and ended with 7 catches for 74 yards, which is, probably his 30th best game as, in the NFL or whatever. But the fact that he was a young firebrand that called the win and then they went out and won, I mean, that really did give him some street cred, so to speak. The reason that I had such a bad feeling was because of how bad the Bengals were. That's too much. Like, you're 9-0, you're on fire, you're going on the road to play a team that has been shitty forever for your whole life. And then now they're like plucking around at 4-5 and talking shit and thinking that they're going to beat you. Like, that's just, yeah, I was not into it. We don't really have to go much into this game other than the Chiefs just started off flat as can be. Their first 5 drives were 3 and out, 3 and out, 1 first down, 3 and out, 3 and out. And so the Bengals, fortunately, only kicked a field goal in those 5 drives. They went punt, 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 field goal. So it was just a muddy, shitty turf, back and forth affair for the start of this game, and really, really horrible turf. I think you play this game again on neutral turf with good turf. I mean, the Chiefs roll. This is very clearly the only reason the Chiefs lost this game was because of the turf. You've seen this happen a lot in the NFL, where if the turf is bad, one team loses because of that. And that's the only reason they lost. There's no other reasons involved. It's just the turf. That was clearly what happened here. And then, they go back and forth. The Bengals kick a field goal. The Chiefs kick a field goal. The Bengals score a touchdown. And so the Chiefs are kind of coming from behind. Morton Anderson misses a 41-yard field goal, which, the GOAT doesn't miss very often, but he didn't come big there. But then after trading punts back and forth with each other, the end of the game, starting with 6 minutes left in this game, it was 10-6 Bengals. I mean, it was right there for anyone to have. Unfortunately, the Bengals scored a touchdown on a punt return. And then after the Chiefs answered with a touchdown, the very next play was a 77-yard touchdown to Peter Warrick, the same guy who returned the punt for a touchdown. And that was all she wrote. And again, turf, huge factor here. Everybody's slipping on the punt return. Everybody slipped on his 70. Greg Wesley just completely ate it on the 77-yard pass. That was a bomb with no one around him because of that. I mean, it was a shit show at the end of this game. And the Bengals also got away early on in this game. When I went back to watch it, I told you there's a play in here that I remember being so mad about, and I got to go find it. And it was a third down that Chad Johnson caught in quotes, because half the ball touches the turf before Chad Johnson even touches it. Absolute no catch at all. But it was a 3rd and 5 that the refs just let go. And I don't know. I guess
didn't challenge. We were looking up before we started the show whether the challenge had been invented, because it was such an challengeable play. And sure enough, the challenge had been invented. It was introduced to the NFL in 1999. But Dick Vermeil is the Chiefs coach, and I mean, he probably didn't believe in it for whatever reason, right?
No, he probably thought that challenging was for the kids, and so they didn't challenge. The Bengals ended up kicking a field goal on that drive. It just it's one of those games where everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Priest Holmes had a really bad game, which doesn't happen. But 16 rushes for 62 yards, including the big thing here was that this Chiefs team that was so efficient on offense and so, run you over with the run game and then efficient passes to the tight ends and stuff like that. Third downs for the Chiefs, 1 for 11 in this whole game. That's what did it. They didn't turn the ball over. Neither team turned the ball over in this game. But 1 for 11 on third down, that'll do it. That'll cook you. And the Chiefs could never, ever, ever sustain a drive. And, that's the way she goes. And the Bengals won their Super Bowl.
The the other thing that happens in these kind of upset games, a lot of the times, not always, but frequently in these kinds of games, is you have a role player have the game of his life. And
Yeah, sure.
Peter Warwick, I just want to lay some stats on you here really fast. First of
Yeah,
all,
sure.
Peter Warwick was the number 4 overall pick, and I think
Yeah.
I'm correctly describing him as a role player. Just looking at the balance of his NFL career, almost 3,000 yards receiving over 6 seasons. So, I mean, he had an 800-yard receiving year in there, but 18 touchdowns over 6 years in the NFL when you're the 4th overall pick. I mean, the guy was a bust. Let's
three touchdowns per year. Yeah. Three games in his career over 100 yards receiving. Yeah. Role player for sure.
So let me hit you with those stats. Stop stealing my thunder. Okay. So this game ranked first in his NFL career in receiving yards, 114 yards against the Chiefs. That's a career high. It also ranked first in his career in punt return yards with 87. So this was his best punt return performance of his career.
Jeez.
And it also was one of 2 games in his career with 2 touchdowns. So he literally had his best performance as a receiver, his best performance as a returner, and his best performance as a scorer, all in this one game, all against the 9-0 undefeated Kansas City Chiefs.
Annoying.
And that's how you lose a perfect season. I mean, it's because Peter Warwick, goes for almost 200 all-purpose yards and 2 touchdowns against you. It's because you can't perform on third down. And
the turf. Don't forget the turf.
Because the turf. I mean, again, the turf. Like, we should replay this game right now. Like, we need to sign a petition. We need to circulate a petition. We need to ask the NFL to replay this game. 2003 Week 10. And obviously, it's been 20 years, so we're just going to have to roll with. I mean, some of these guys aren't even alive anymore, probably. Sadly. I'm not going to check.
Morton Anderson.
Morton Anderson, thankfully, is still with us. But I mean, listen, we're going to have 55-year-old Trent Green out there against 55-year-old John Kitna.
Morton Anderson, 62.
Morton Anderson is 62. We're going to have to replay the game because the turf was unacceptable. Let's do awards here. And I'll give the 5-star man award to Trent Green. Trent Green was good in this game. I mean, again, like, we can't overlook the fact that the Chiefs were 1 of 11 on third down. And, that's not just on the offensive line. It's not just on Priest Holmes, who obviously did have a bad game. It's on the quarterback too. And Trent Green's stats in this game merit consideration as a 5-star man, but there certainly were some mistakes. 28 of 42 for 313 and 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He did take a costly sack in this game. Others in consideration, Johnny Morton, our perennial whipping boy.
Yeah.
At 10 targets for 7 receptions and 96 yards. Whew.
Yeah.
Tony Gonzalez had himself a game, 10 for 7, 86 yards and a touchdown. But I think Trent Green deserves the award here. We should also shout out Jason Dunn, 1 catch for 3 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah. Boy, Jason, touchdown.
But
those are rare.
I mean, listen, Trent had a good performance. He deserves a 5-star man award. I'm going to let you handle the trash man.
Yeah. The trash very easily was the grass in Cincinnati. You want to blame maybe Eric Warfield for busting a coverage, the special teams for falling down on that Peter Warwick touchdown. But at the end of the day, the sod father, who probably had something to do with this game too, screwed the Chiefs out of their rightful win here. That's how winners handle losing a game, is you just blame the turf. You blame other, factors that isn't your team not executing. And
well, I mean, really doesn't it all just come down to the turf? Doesn't that determine the outcome of every NFL game? I mean,
it does. And
specifically,
one team getting screwed by the turf.
Sure, yes, of course. Right. It picks, as we know, picks a winner before the game, and the sod father rules all. I mean, it's just, there is no free will. We all just, we move at the whim of the ground that we walk on. And that was certainly the case here. And fuck the grass. It was the trash man in this game. Picking a wild card. There's some options. I'm going to throw Vonnie Holiday's name out there.
Okay.
You remember when Big Vonnie Holiday had those 3 sacks in week 1?
Yeah, he was on pace for 48 sacks for the year. Yeah.
Sure, he was on pace for 48 sacks through 3 weeks. He had another sack in week 3. Still on pace for, what would that be? Do the math.
A lot. I don't
4
want
through
to.
week 3, that would be 16. Does that
Sure.
sound right? 16?
16 weeks. So you're looking at more like 20 something there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh,
still,
yeah, sure. Yeah,
still
sure.
decent.
A lot.
Yep.
Well, he's stuck on 4 for a while.
Mm-hmm.
He was stuck on 4 for 8 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
He picked up his 5th sack in this game, though. So,
hey,
listen, Bonnie made the appropriate sacrifices to the turf gods before this game. They favored him by granting him a sack. He had been in ill graces with the turf gods because, listen, if the turf gods don't permit it, you can't. I mean, how are you supposed to get to the quarterback if you can't?
That's right.
They
don't let you.
Right?
Yep.
I mean, like, we all know that it's not the measure of how good an offensive line is. It's merely a measure of how good the grass is. And if the grass isn't good, you're not getting to the quarterback. That's it.
You had no shot. You just couldn't have ever pulled anything off. The grass dictates all.
Bonnie got a sack. He's the wild card. It's always sunny in Chiefs Kingdom despite the loss. Back next week. See you next time.